This week on the podcast, I have the pleasure of chatting with Klemens Franz, illustrator and graphic designer in board games.
The beat of the drums echoes in the pulse beat of the young braves.
Salut les joueuses, salut les joueurs, je suis Paul Gara. On se retrouve en direct d'Essen pour une nouvelle interview. Je suis en compagnie de Klemens Franz. Hello Klemens.
Hello.
How are you? It's the first day of the fair.
I'm fine. I'm already a little bit exhausted.
We were saying just before there were lots of people, lots of crowd, in fact, more than the previous years.
Yes, I think so. I haven't been to the fair last year, but it's definitely more than the years before, and it's really, really crowded.
Now you're just here also for the birthday of Lookout, I guess. It's one of the reasons you came this year.
Yes, absolutely. We have 25 years, and Lookout was my entry point into the business.
Yes, we are going to talk about Lookout later. First, we are going to talk about how you discover the board games, in fact, the hobby, and your scholar experience and everything. I've read that you were a gamer before starting working in the hobby, and then you were going to Essen, and it's when you came to Essen 1 year that you had the opportunity to work with Lookout, in fact.
We're going back. My first year in Essen was 2002, so that's quite some time ago. And I somehow stumbled into the whole business of board gaming. I loved board games. I was a board gamer before illustrating board games, and I designed board games and pitched them to publishers, and they always told me they look nice, but they still need some work. And yeah, then it was, I think, 2006 when I visited the Lookout booth and talked to Hanno for the first time, and then everything started moving rather quickly, I have to say, with the first game.
I read that you were a board game player before, then video game players, and then you played Catan, and it was a new start for your interest in board games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did play a couple of board games when I was young in the 80s, but the games we had, they weren't that strong. I played, of course, Hero Quest, Civilization from Francis Tresham, stuff like that. And then video games hit me really hard, and I even worked for half a year for Ubisoft in the marketing department, and I somehow thought about going into this business. Yeah, but then, as you mentioned, Catan was such a new experience in terms that it reminded me a lot of digital games, but it still was this social experience on the table. And I loved the negotiation aspect that I knew from the Civilization game, the old Civilization game. And yeah, it really hit me hard again. And I started collecting while studying, while being a student. I started collecting, and the game collection grew and grew and grew. You do not really study illustration, but you study art and notably sculpture at school. Yes. I mean, I went to an art school, but my course was sculpturing, so three-dimensional stuff with stone, with clay, with wood. And I always liked to illustrate, to draw things and to make my prototypes look a little bit pretty, or a little bit prettier than others. And that's how I stumbled, or that's my basic knowledge. And then my study course was something completely different in the field of IT, information technologies. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yes, you shift towards design and graphic, and you made a thesis on Helen Keller. That's very interesting because maybe she's not very well known. Helen Keller, I don't know if people very know the story of her. It's funny because when I was a kid, there was a cartoon, not a cartoon, but anime, manga on TV, and they were talking about her. So it's why I know the story. And you did your thesis, but you from a digital point of view?
Well, she's not quite famous in Austria, where I come from as well. So it was for me my first contact with her. I did a multimedia application where I tried to visualize her life and some major points in her life and how she she became the woman she was and how she experienced her disabilities and her losing sight and regaining the ability to understand the concept of language, stuff like this. And I did it in a multimedia application that was adjustable in terms of how much information and how much emotion you wanted in it. And the main arc or the main topic of my thesis was digital storytelling, adaptive digital storytelling. And back in 2002, 2003, this was quite new terrain.
Yes. So you had both these two skills. I mean, sculpture or illustration and doing prototypes are something very you do with your own human skills, and you have also these digital skills by creating an application and everything. So it's important for you to keep these two skills, two aspects. They are not so opposite for you.
No, I don't think so. It's just another form of expression. Either do it on paper or do it digitally. Of course, you have to use different tools. Back then, you really had to program different things. So there's a technical understanding there as well, but it's still a tool of expression where you can visualize things. So I don't think that it's too opposite. But it can inspire the opposite.
So after your studies, you became an assistant at the university. So you were a teacher, and is that something very important for you to teach, to transmit your knowledge? And I also watched your conference, recent conference you made. So it's something important for you. This also theoretical aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially regarding, even though I started in the digital field with new media technologies, it's really important for me personally to, if I have the opportunity, I love to talk about analog games. I love to talk about board games, and I love to show people what they can do, how they developed and evolved in the last 20, 30 years. That's something I love to do, and when I get the chance, I'm always happy to do so. And in many cases, I do get the opportunity in terms of digital games conferences where I somehow slip in with my topic of analog games, and people are always they're really interested and open-minded, and it's such a raw medium where you have just paper, just wood, just plastic or cardboard, and you're still creating these worlds that do work, that do have a structure, to have a flow, to have forms of interaction that we weren't aware of a couple of years ago, that we can do these things with those materials. So talking about them and teaching them is really important for me. Yeah, and I think the experience I have and the times I had the chance to be a part of can be quite interesting, I hope.
Yes, I think the two conferences I watched was were recorded last year, I think in 2024, and they were very interesting. Especially one you talk about analog board games. It says analog board games is not something terms we really use most of the time, and there is a wider of definition compared to board games. I mean, how could you give a definition of analog board games?
Well, there's a little bit of discussion going on in the background, an academic discussion, if the term analog game is a good term, because you only can use it if you have the opposite, the digital game.
Okay.
But it's still, I think it's the best term we have to create this container where we can put in board games, where we can put in card games, live role-playing games, everything that's not digital. Yeah.
It's very funny because in French, we don't say board games, we say society games. And in a way, it includes role-playing games and even it could be escape game in a way and everything. So maybe society games in French is close than with this definition of analog games.
Yeah, I think so. There is, even in German, there's another term. It's not only board game. We have this Gesellschaftsspiel, which means society game.
Yes. So,
and that's not only reduced to the table, but it's we do it with other people. So escape rooms, zombie runs, for example, are things we do in the real world with real people. And I think we need a term that highlights this aspect.
Yes. In the conference, you mentioned Amabel Holland and this notion of system, because board games are systems. And you mentioned that in digital games, the computer manage all the maintenance phase and do everything, is in fact in charge of the system. But in a board game, in an analog games, players are in charge of the system. And that's a very important point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one big difference that we have, that all these procedures that we have to keep the game alive, we have to execute. And you can say it's a burden to do that, and sometimes it's getting too much, so you cannot scale it limitless. But on the other hand, this is what I was talking about when I mentioned that they are so raw in the way we experience them. We see the structure and we have to understand the structure. We have to agree on the structure and on the game rules and on the game mechanisms to bring the game to life. And this is something that's quite interesting for people designing digital games as well, to see this. Okay, how much can we distribute to the players? What are they willing to do? What's getting too complicated? So that's really something that sets those two apart, those two forms, digital and analog. Even though they have the same system and same structure, it's the way we execute them is completely different.
And also you mentioned something about analog games, that there is that our sense are very important, because of course we see the board games. So you are an illustrator, so of course, and you work on iconography. So it's important to see, but also the sound when you have tokens or metal coins in the we can hear the sound, or we can feel the weight of the. So I think materiality is something important for you. It's a big part of the experience.
Yes, on many levels. First, like you already mentioned, we have the components in our hands. We put the tokens on the board. It makes a specific sound. So there's this whole layer that is quite unique. And people are willing to invest a lot of money in metal coins, in luxury components, stuff like that, to get a more even more inviting and strong feeling of the game and the atmosphere. And on the other hand, it's the limitation of the material. I always like this example when we do layout, or when I do layout and illustrate a game board. It's always frontal on my screen. But that's not how players are experienced the game. If you have the game board on the table, you probably have 4 different sides from which the players are looking at the game board. So I'm not designing a fixed interface, but something that is placed on a table in a room where people are looking from different perspectives on the material. So it's not only the material itself, but it's the players moving within the room where the material is placed.
So it means that the player's body is the kind of interface between the rules and the social experience, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, we could go so far to say we are components of the game. We are parts of the game. And there are even games that work with our limitations, our human limitations, in terms of probably you have to close your eyes and memorize something, or you have to do something where you know you might be failing because it's quite difficult to fulfill this task. So we are really working in games with those limitations that we have, to see our bodies as components that can be an integral part of the game design.
So it's something I think lots, an idea I have, that in a way players are a form of code designer of the board games, because if the board game can exist, but if nobody plays it, in fact it does not exist at all. you need someone to activate the board games.
Yes, we have to bring it to life, and we even have the opportunity to include house rules. We have to alternate, or we can alternate the code that is embedded into the materials. So I think that's beautiful, and I think sometimes players are afraid to alternate the game that they have, because if they're not happy with how it works, they can use a house rule. There's no law against house rules. No publisher will sue you if you play with your own house rules. So you're invited to become a designer and alternate the code. So that's the beauty of the system.
So it means that players have to appropriate the system very easily. And I think that maybe your job especially when you work on iconography, is to help them to make this appropriation easier, in fact.
Yeah, that's always the big challenge, to make understanding the rules and the interactions in the game as easy as possible. But that's something that changed over the course of time, because 20, 30 years ago, if you would have looked at the board game from today, a complex Euro game, for example, you wouldn't have understood all the different icons and signs that you have. But now we have this tradition, this history of complex games. And on the other hand, we have this knowledge of other forms of interaction. Without tablets, without smartphones, we couldn't make the games we make today, because people know new forms of interactions, know new signs, know new images and symbols. So we have more options to bring interactions to a medium that is not responsive, but it's still working in a similar way.
So we are going to talk about something maybe you told lots of time, but it's your story with Agricola, because it's a very important, I think, board game in your life. So you mentioned that you were in Essen, you met Lookout Boss, and it's how it starts with working with them, especially with Agricola. So it's because Agricola, there are lots of cards. We know that it's quite expensive to illustrate lots of cards, and because you were novice, you were a noob in illustration, you were less expensive, and you have already the experience with illustrating cards. I think you told the story, you made a kind of...
Yeah, I can tell the story. Okay, Hanno is quite clever, and he did this illustration contest a year before he started working on Agricola. And I provided a card with a dragon, and it was a game about dragon, and the card got chosen. And Hanno invited the different illustrators at the fair to sit together and handed out a sheet, and everyone had to draw a dragon on there. And some said, no, I don't want to do it, and I drew this dragon. And then he asked me if I was interested in doing a bigger game where they need a lot of illustrations. And I was, of course, like, yeah, sure, let's see what we can do. And he and Uwe, of course, they asked me to do different levels of detail to see what we can do in what amount of time. And then we chose this quite sketchy and quite, a little bit childish looking style, where these pencil outlines, and then it's colored quite in a simple way. But it was the only way we could realize so many different cards. And of course, I was a newbie, and therefore cheaper than others. That's true as well.
So you also said, I think, that you never played the game before doing the illustrations, and you only discover it after all the work.
Yeah, that's the simple reason was that Uwe only had one prototype. That's it. And they sent me the rule book, and it was a game that from the beginning it was thematically quite strong, so you understood the mechanisms. It reminded me a lot of the digital game Harvest Moon, which is about farming. I had an idea how it would work, and then we went through the process. It took some time. It was quite intense, of course, because there's a lot of work to do and different opinions, and text has to be written and rewritten on the card, and it was quite an exhausting but interesting and great journey. And I did play the first time the finished game. I think it was Wednesday evening at the fair. and I was completely blown away by the game.
You also mentioned something very interesting about Agricola, because most of the time we think about Agricola as one of the first worker placement, but you say the mechanics are not so important. The most important thing is the work on the card, in a way, as much for Juve, who designed the cards effects, and also for you for illustrating, and that this board game doesn't need expansion. It's complete by itself, because lots of the cards, and when you play, you only see a few cards, in fact.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, there are people always complaining when one expansion is not translated into the language or whatever, but it's such a complete game, even in its basic form, that you have enough cards in there, and that's the magic of it. That on one hand, it's a worker placement game, it's thematically rich, but you have this variety through the cards. And it always feels fresh, and it's always a new puzzle that you have to solve. And of course, you want to have more and more cards. And Uwe did design them just for fun. For when he was relaxing, he once told me, if I want to relax, I go to my balcony and I lie there and I think of new cards and new ideas. And it was just a huge playground for him. And I think it was the first time that this Euro structure of a game was combined with something that we more or less knew only from American-styled games or collectible card games.
Do you also think that the obligation you have to make such lots of cards and everything, in a way, inspire your style after? Because you said it's not so, maybe you said like a very naive style, and it's not have to be very beautiful like a painting or something, it has to be very clear for players, in fact. It's influenced your style after, you think?
I think because, publishers sometimes even asked for that specific style. I did one game with a Japanese publisher. I don't remember the name, I have to be honest. It was a game, I think, from Rainer Knizia about medieval ships and
Okay.
Where they explicitly asked me to do it very German style looking. So that's okay. I mean, when that's what they are aiming for, that's absolutely fine with me.
Sometimes I said that when we see a cover illustrated by you, we don't need to look on the back to have a description. We know what kind of board games. It's a German board games. I mean, like German style board games, more than Euro games, I will say. So your visual identity is very related to these games, in fact.
Yes. I only can say that I was lucky to be at the right time, at the right moment, to be part of those great games by Uwe and other designers. So I was lucky. It's defining a specific space I feel comfortable at. I mean, there are worse things that could happen.
So it means that for you, illustration has to be, helpful for the game and are not just existing by themselves. You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I can say is that there are so many great illustrators out there that are technically way ahead of what I can do and what I'm doing. But I have this niche where I'm happy, and for me it's really important that those different elements go well together and make it easy to get into the game and get into the flow of the game. So to think of how could we incorporate thematic aspects into the layout of the game. It's not just like doing an illustration, doing a frame around it, putting it on a card. I think that's not enough, because all these graphic elements, they can tell stories as well. They can create an environment that welcomes the players to get into the story, into the world of the game. So I always love it when you have the feeling, looking at the board game, okay, it's not just those frames where things are put in, but the illustrator, he thought about how these borders, how these icons can all be a part of the story of the world the game is set in.
And you also, so you're known for your illustration. I was thinking Agricola, Orléans, Grand S03E Hotel, of course, my favorite board game. But you're also very well known for your iconography that is very clear, that we can understand without needed to check. I think about the way you represent revenue phase with this end, I think you create like a language with iconography in a way that has been reused by for other board games.
Once again, I was lucky to work with the designers on the games, and I always like to tell the story about Le Havre with Uwe, where it took us so long to get the iconography right, and it still changed after that. But yes, it's true. Some DNA of iconography we created back then. It's still there in modern board games. So we helped. And I always say we because it was a team effort. We helped to create probably foundation for complex iconography. So but once again, I was just lucky being there with the right game and the right publisher.
Yes, of course. Yes, because there is. Yes, you were one of the first to have this opportunity. In fact,
absolutely, yeah.
And we said Agricola, but it was a very big success for Lookout, and it was, I think, the first board Euro games for you, Uwe, and your first. So it was a quite beautiful meeting of people in like a success story for everybody in a way. You keep, of course, stronger links with Lookout and also with Uwe.
Yeah, I mean, we created a couple of games together. Of course, there was Agricola. There had to be a game after that and a game after that. So we still have contact, even though I haven't worked together with Uwe for a couple of years now. But I'm still with Lookout. I'm even an employee for Lookout.
You are an employee?
Yeah, for since May. This year, yeah. So there was a point where I had to decide whether to stay full-time independent or focus on, the games we developed at Lookout and keeping them alive and guiding them through their life cycle. And there's so much work in the background regarding all the print preparation and communicating with licensing partners, stuff like that, where I have a lot of knowledge. And I think it's there I can do the most for the company and for the hobby. That's why I reduced illustrating games, because there are so many illustrators out there, and I love to work with other and younger illustrators as well. That's really a great thing. So it changed a little bit during the last years, but I'm still completely connected to Lookout. It's my home.
You have also created Atelier 198.
Yes.
What was the atelier exactly? It was like a studio of illustrator or something?
Yeah, that's a little bit big. It's just our my old house number. Before we got street names and street numbers, it was just my hometown and 198. Well, it was me. I wanted to have a name for the things I do, for the website, for the email address. So that's basically the main idea. And my wife started helping me. She's doing most of the layout for rule books, stuff like that. Because when I started, I did everything. I did the illustrations, I did the rule book, I did the packaging, I did the print preparation. And when she got more time, she stepped in and took the rule books, because I had enough of rule books. It's really hard to do them next or side by side to the illustrations. And this grew and grew. And she's part of the Lookout team as well. So we work at the same office, but I'm not full-time Lookout. I still have some time left for existing customers and new projects, but only smaller projects.
Okay. How do you choose your other projects? If a publisher wants to have your illustration work, what's going to make the decision for you? What are your criterion?
One is, do I know the publisher? Do we already have worked together? I love to work with people I know. Not because I'm afraid of new things, but more because I see them as friends, as family. They've helped me through the years, so it's always good getting back. And the other thing is mostly the timing aspect. Do they need the game next year? Do they need the game in 2 months? That's always the main reason for the decision.
For example, in France, French illustrators are very worried about artificial intelligence, especially for illustration. What is your point of view about it?
That's a tricky one, because we do not know how it will evolve, but there's always one theoretical side note or footnote that's really important. There's a thing called cultural lag. It means that the technology is evolving and developing faster than we can react as a society. Then we can create the discourse we need to create the laws we need. That's something we've seen in history so many times. People working in big companies where they have to work for 14, 16 hours a day took quite some time for people to organize them and to tell, okay, we cannot do this. So technology and business is always ahead of time.
Yes.
So there will be a lot of discussion, I hope. The main question we have to ask ourselves is, do we really want to give things away that we love to do, that we want to create to express ourselves? Do we really want to automize illustrations, literature, movies? Is it really what we want to do with the technology that we have? And honestly, I think the answer is no. But luckily, the board gaming community is quite sensitive.
Yes.
I think it's the self-understanding of the hobby we have and love, people together at the table, humans interacting, and that's something we want to feel through the components as well. So the bubble or the business is quite sensitive. Big companies are quite sensitive and do not want to use it because of this aspect of how these technologies are seen. They are, of course, an opportunity to save costs.
Yes.
But there is this copyright question that isn't answered and that we have to answer before we want to move more forward. But for me, I'm not afraid, especially since I'm focusing on print preparation and graphic design and iconography, making the things to work on the table. But I can understand if you're only focused on illustrations that you might get this bad feeling in your stomach.
Yes. As you said, this copyright question is very important, but is not solved. And of course, laws takes lots of time to draft a law and to vote a law. In fact, that's the main issue, that we are in this period of transition between the technology and the law, in fact, and the regulation.
And I've learned that sometimes it's good if the process is not too fast, is slow. Because I have one example where it's a couple of years back where we used early AI technology to create a draft for a cover. I don't want to name the publisher, and we showed it to licensing partners, and everyone liked it. And then the real illustrations were done by a French illustrator, and she did a great job. But everyone was like, when they saw the finished cover, we liked the old one better. Okay. They don't really liked it better, but we created an image of how the game looks so early in the process that they somehow stuck to that impression they had in the beginning. So even though it's always mentioned that it's good for prototyping and to get quick results, I don't think that's a good way to go. Keep it reduced. Take your time. It's better.
You also designed some board games yourselves. Was it a good experience? Something you want to do more or not? Or it was just...
I'd love to do it more, but the main problem, and that's a structural problem that we have, is I'm doing graphic design, and the publishers, for them, it's absolutely clear to pay me for the work I'm doing. If you are a board game designer, you have to invest so much of your free time, of your spare time. You have to invest so much into it. Prototyping, playing the games, iterations of the games. So it's really hard to create a situation where you are able to live with the thing you do. And I think that's a problem we have in the structure of the business, that sometimes publishers tend to see the designers as people who are creative, but who are experiencing and executing their hobbies. So it's okay if they invest so much time. So it's more a time question, a resource question, and the games I did design, they were always requested by the publishers. So I had a timeline, I had a time frame, I had a fixed amount I got, and probably then a percentual amount through the years. So there it was a luxury situation to do those games, but designing them just for the designer's sake, I don't have the time for that.
Yes. When you are a game designer, you have the idea, so you are the start of the project, but you are paid maybe the last people paid in the process. In fact,
if you're lucky, if your game is selling, if it's not selling, it might get. You never should check your hour basis, the money you get per hour as a board game designer, because I think you don't do it for that. But I think that's something we have to work on.
So we were talking about the 25 years of Lookout. You're here for that, but are there also board games that you worked on that are released and you want to speak or?
This year at the fair, no, not really. No big release. There is, I don't know if it's already printed. There's a small family game at Queen Games, Ladybugs, that I'm quite fond of, because it was. There's an old version which is an abstract game, and then Queen Games contacted me if I want to do the illustrations for a setting in an historical world. And the idea of the ladybugs in the game is mine, so I'm quite happy that they took the idea and they accepted the idea. You have these pieces with dots on them, and my suggestion was to make ladybugs out of it, because they have these dots on their back. And I think it's an abstract game, but it's quite friendly, quite inviting. So I like it, but I'm not sure if it's printed already.
Okay. I don't know if there is something else you want to speak.
Not really. Yeah, okay. I'm fine.
I really want to thank you for your time, your availability. It was a really, really big pleasure for me to speak with you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the questions. I mean, I normally get the same questions all the time, but you surprised me in a very positive way about talking about other stuff as well. So thank you for the interview. It was quite illuminating.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But I have to say, your conference were very, very interesting. I really was very happy to find them for preparing the interview and to have the opportunity to discuss of these issues, because I'm very interested in all this reflection about board games. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Merci à tous. Au revoir. Salut.
This interview was recorded at the Essenspiel on October 23rd, 2025, and this episode is produced by Polgara and Hammer. Our show is completely independent. Its contents are free, as in free speech, and we are not sponsored. Follow Polgara's account on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to Le Point de Polgara, and until next time for a new episode.